Yesterday we completed at verse number 1.12.30. We concluded this verse. This is a translation we read. Today we'll go through little bit purport. So this verse is Esaloke Vidyata Pariksit. Yet Prabhu Urvad Krishna Anu Jayan Parikshitana Resliha. So we discussed that his son would become famous in the world as a Pariksit, because he would come to examine all human beings in his search after that personality whom he saw before his birth. Thus he would come to constantly contemplate him. So Prabhupada is very nicely writing that, how, if someone sees the Krishna from childhood, or if Krishna's activities are impressed in someone's mind, this comes from the Pariksit Maharaj. That's why Prabhupada writes in the purport that Maharaj Pariksit, he was fortunate as he was, got the impression of the Lord even in the womb of his mother, and thus his contemplation of the Lord was constant with him. Since he got the impression of the Lord in the womb, he could contemplate the Lord constantly. So that is the power of the Buddha Sister and all those things. So once the impression of the transcendental from the Lord is fixed in one's mind, one can never forget in any circumstance. If this kind of Garbhadan Sanskara is performed, then some child can remember Krishna. Child Pariksit, after coming out of the womb, was in the habit of examining everyone to see whether he was the same person at whom he saw first in the womb. So we discussed how he saw the Lord, that he was thumb high, wearing a saffron, light yellow dhoti, four-handed form, holding a conch, Sankha Chakra Gada Padma, and all those things were mentioned. Right? So, but no one could be equal to or more attractive. So, since Pariksit Maharaj is seeing this personality, when he came out from the womb, still he wanted to see again. So he was examining everyone. Is this the person whom I saw in the womb? That's why, examining means he was Pariksha kar rahe the. That's why he's known as Pariksit. He was Pariksha. But no one could be equal to or more attractive than the Lord, and therefore he never accepted anyone. But the Lord was constantly with him by such an examination, because when he was examining, he was constantly remembering the form of the Lord which he saw in the womb. Okay, so he was in constant remembrance of the Lord. And thus Maharaj Pariksit was always engaged in the devotional service of the Lord by remembrance. So, then Shiv Goswami remarks in that connection that every child, even the impression of the Lord from his very childhood is how we can go, of course, from childhood, and this can be done even by the Garbhadan Sanskara. So, Garbhadan Sanskara is the performed, when the child is in the womb or before he is going to be impregnated. So, if given an impression of the Lord from his very childhood, certainly become a great devotee of the Lord, like a Maharaj Pariksit. So that's why the Garbhadan Sanskara is very, very important. So again, he is mentioning, one may not be as fortunate as Maharaj Pariksit to have the opportunity to see the Lord in the womb of his mother, but even if he is not so fortunate, he can be made so if the parents of the child desire him to be. So, what kind of child will take birth, that depends even on the consciousness of the mother and father. When child is in the womb, and before a child is taken, during the child is being impregnated in the womb. So that is very, very important. That depends on the consciousness of the parents and surroundings. Even Prabhupada gives his own example. He says, there is a practical example in my personal life in this connection. He says, so my father was pure devotee of the Lord, and when I was only 4 or 5 years old, my father gave me a couple of forms of the Radha and Krishna. So when Prabhupada was child, so his father gave him, Gaur Mohan, they gave him a couple of forms of Radha and Krishna. So then he says that in the playful manner, I used to worship this deity along with my sister, and I used to imitate the performance of the neighboring temple Radha Govinda. So Prabhupada said that, oh, my father gave me Radha Govind deity, and he was imitating the neighboring temple, who were also worshipping the deity. So Prabhupada was also doing. So it is said that imitation of the good thing is good. Imitation of good thing is good. If it is going to transform your life. If it is going to make you fall down, then it's not good. Let's say someone say, oh, I want to imitate Haridas Thakur and want to chant, what is it? And if you want to chant 192 rounds, by doing this thing, it is hankering for name, fame, and glory, then it's not good for him. But if that imitation is helping him to advance, then okay, that's good. His childhood, he was in the worship of Radha Govinda. That's you can see it how when he traveled all over the world, he established the beat. It was the same activity he did, and even he was playing, he was holding the Rath Yatra as a child, and he proposed. And now afterwards, at the age of 70, he made the Rath Yatra famous throughout the world. That's what he's saying. By constantly visiting his neighboring temple and copying the ceremonies in the connection with my own deities of play, I develop a natural affinity for the Lord. So whatever things we get in the childhood, that we develop the affinity throughout life. Right? So my father used to observe all ceremonies befitting my position. So father was also helping me. Later on, these activities were suspended due to my association in the school and college. So it happens. I remember when I was child, maybe 6, 7 year old, I remember, my mother used to tell me stories from Ramayana and Mahabharata and in relation to Krishna and Ram. And when I came to school, I also forgot all those things. I become, I was in the bad, not that kind of bad association, but it was not Krishna conscious association, not a devotional association. And of course, they taught something wrong also in the school. All those things happened. And but again, after some time, by some arrangement, again that got revived. So I can relate these things. So all of you can relate, you somehow or somewhere he has to be, doing some activities in the childhood, and after between forget during the school time and later on he revives, right? Revive. That's what he says. But in my youthful days, sorry, yes. So I developed natural affinity for the Lord. My father used to observe all the ceremonies befitting a position. Later on, his activities were suspended due to my association in the school and colleges. And I become completely out of practice. He has left that practice. In my youthful days, when I met my spiritual master, Sri Srimad Bhakti Siddhanta Goswami Maharaj, again I revive my old habit, and same playful deities become my worshipful deity in proper regulation. So yesterday, the celebration of the 150th birthday of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, so that we observe. Okay. This was followed up until I left the family connection, and I am pleased that my generous father gave me first impression, which was developed later in regulative devotion service of his divine grace. So that's what he's saying. In childhood, his father, biological father gave him that activity, and in the youth, he revived this activity by the mercy of Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Then he says, Maharaj Prahlad also advised that such an impression of godly relation must be impregnated from the beginning of the childhood. Komaram Acharya Pratya. Maharaj Pariksit also said that this Krishna conscious activity should be imprinted in the mind of the child at the age of 5. Is it a low voice? Hare Krishna?
Hare Krishna, bro.
Hare Krishna.
Is it
Yes,
clear
Prabhu.
now?
Clear,
Yes,
your
yes.
voice is not becoming clear. It's low, very low.
What about others? They are hearing
No, it
clearly?
is audible, Prabhuji.
Okay, okay,
Now it's audible, Prabhu.
okay, okay. So yeah, so Maharaj Prahlad also advised same thing. That Komara Masaya Pragya, we should train in Krishna consciousness from the age of 5, minimum age of 5. Then he says, otherwise one may miss the opportunity of the human form of life, which is very valuable for, although it is temporary like others. This is the goal, and this should be imprinted in the mind of the child from the very beginning. See, actually, very beginning, not at minimum age of 5, but it should be begin from the Garbhadhan Sanskara. That's why even the, ISKCON and all, when the humans get pregnant, they are advised to read Bhagavatam, Krishna, because this is how, this is the power of getting the impression of Krishna in the childhood, or if you can say from the beginning of the Garbhadhan. So now we proceed ahead. So then he says, Rajaputra Vavruddhe Asusuplo Ivo Upa Apuryamana Pitrubhi Kashtabhirevasu. Anvaham says, as the moon in its waxing fortnight develops day after day, the royal prince Pariksit very soon developed luxuriantly under the care and full facility of his guardian grandfathers. In the previous verse we discussed, Brahmanas, you know, describe the future of Pariksit Maharaj, how would be, how would be his qualities. Now, they are just writing that, day by day, how the waxing moon develops day after day. The same way Pariksit Maharaj very soon developed luxuriantly under the care and full facilities of his guardian grandfathers. Grandfathers means all the 5 Pandavas. So then they continue here that Yakshamaну Aswamegena Jati Droho Chihasaya Raja Labdhano Dradyo Nanyatrakargandayo. So just at that time, King Yudhisthir was considering performing horse sacrifice to get free from sins incurred from fighting with the king's king. So even the Lord Ramchandra was also advised to perform Aswamedh Yajna after, by other ceremony. Same way, Yudhishthira Maharaj was also thinking to perform a horse sacrifice to get free from the sins after the sins incurred after the battle of Kurukshetra. But he became anxious to get some wealth, for there were no surplus fund outside of fines and tax collection. But there was no sufficient fund. Okay. So that's what he says. After the battle of Kurukshetra, the state treasury was exhausted, and therefore there was no surplus fund except the fund from the tax collection and fine. Such a funds were sufficient only for the state budget and having no excess fund. The king was anxious to get more wealth in some other way in order to perform the horse sacrifice. And why he was doing? So he was performing this horse sacrifice by following the instruction of Bhishmadev. Yeah. In the next verse, he continue that. Tada abhipretama bhratro achitta chodita dhanam prahinamaja aja hurur udichyam disi hurisaha. So then understanding the hearty wishes of the king, his brother, as advised by the infallible Lord Krishna, collected sufficient riches from the north, led by King Maruta. So who is the King Maruta? So he was a great over the world long before the reign of Maharaj Yudhisthira. He was the son of Maharaj Abhikshita and was a great devotee of the sun god. So he has left some wealth. Okay, so then Himalayan mountain, and later on Arjuna went and he brought that wealth, and that way the Astamik Yajna was successfully executed. Okay. So in last purport, Prabhupada writes that so nice here that he says the success of particular type of sacrifice completely depends on the priest in the chart. In this age of Kali, or all kind of sacrifice are forbidden. This kind of horse sacrifice and all those things are forbidden because there is no learned priest amongst the so-called Brahmanas. Who, Brahmanas. There were no qualified Brahmanas. So that's why in this age of Kali, and there is no sufficient fund also. That's why in the age of Kali, there only one sacrifice has been recommended. That is Sankirtan Yajna, by chanting the holy name of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Ram Ram. That has been objected by Lord Chaitanya. That we are very well aware. Then he says, Kena Sambrita Sambharo Dharmaputra Yudhisthira Vajini Destridir Bhito Yogyo Sama Yajadharim. Says, so whatever wealth was brought by Arjuna, so by those riches, the king could procure the ingredients for 3 horse sacrifice. This that riches was thus the pious king Yudhisthir was very fearful after the battle of Kurukshetra. Please, Lord Hari, the personality of Godhead. He was just performing this horse sacrifice to please by following the instruction of Bhismadeva, and he wanted to please Lord Krishna. Okay, so that he can be free from the fear of uh, sinful reaction. Okay. So that's what he writes in the purport that Maharaj Yudhisthira was the ideal and celebrated pious king of the world. Still, he was greatly afraid after the execution of the battle of Kurukshetra. Even the Bhishma Pitama mentioned that, oh, you have not done anything wrong. Okay. But still, he was fear after battle of Kurukshetra because of mass killing in the fight. Okay, and that was done just to install him as a king of Hastinapur, all of whole Bharatvarsha. The responsibility of this sinful activity, killing the so many people in the warfare. So he wanted to get rid of from these sins. That's why he wanted to perform Aswamek Yajna. So yeah, but he did. So we should take a lesson from Maharaj, from the acts of Maharaj Pariksit, that he was afraid of sins committed on the battlefield, and therefore he wanted to satisfy the supreme authority. So you cannot counteract the sinful activity by performing pious activity, but you have to. But you should have to please the Lord Krishna, and of course you should not do that. Oh, by pleasing Lord Krishna, the reaction of sinful activity will go away. No, that is the offense. That is one of the offense, and in the committing the sinful activity on the strength of holy Krishna. That is what offense. So we should not do this. But here, of course, Yudhishthira Maharaj fought this battle on the order of Lord Krishna, and still he wanted to set an example that, oh, even if you have king, but still you have to perform uh, activities to please Lord Krishna to get rid of from the sin. That is, this indicates that unintentional sins are also committed in our daily occupational discharge of the duty. And to counteract even such an unintentional crime, one must perform sacrifice as they are recommended in the real scripture. So they say, Pancha Papa, they say that when you clean the house, you kill so many insects. When you cut vegetable, you kill. And when you cook, you kill so many germs. So these are simple activities. So ये सब चीजें होता है. Now, what is the sacrifice of this age of Kali? Chanting the holy name of the Lord. That's why it says, Yajna athat karmana nyatra lokoyam karma bandhana. If you don't perform any activity for pleasing the Lord Krishna, then he will incur a sinful reaction. And if you perform the activities to please Krishna, you will be free from the reaction of the sinful activity. Okay? So that is what. That's why any activity we do, we should perform for the pleasure of Lord Krishna, or by adding a Krishna in our daily activity. That's very, very important. Okay. So especially for the Kali Yuga, what is that activity? Chanting the holy name of the Lord. Okay. Yeah. So here, if Maharaj Yudhisthira is the sinner in his state affair, wherein killing of an animal is recognized art, then we can just imagine the amount of sins committed consciously or unconsciously by untrained population of the Kali Yuga, who have no way to perform sacrifice to the pleasure of Supreme Lord. So nowadays, there are so many perform the activities to neutralize them by pleasing the Supreme Lord. You can imagine what will be the stock of the simple reaction. Okay. That's why Bhagavatam says the primary duty of the human being is to satisfy the Supreme Lord by the performance of one's occupational duty. What is that verse? Sam Siddhir Hari Toshanam. Dharma Pranutishta Se Pumsa Vishwaksena. Forgot that verse. Yeah. Some Siddhir Hari Toshanam. That should be for the pleasure of Supreme Person of the That is very, very important. Okay. So whatever activity we do, that should be done by keeping in the Krishna center, in the center. And that activity should be, should be within the boundaries of the Vedic authorities. Okay. And here it is said, Ahuto Ahuto Bhagwan Raja Yajitva Vijayrpuna Vijayrnrupam Uvasa Kitchin Masan Suhruda Priya Kamyaya. The Lord Krishna, the personality of God, had been invited to the sacrifice by Maharaj Yudhisthir. Saw to it that they are performed by qualified Brahmana. So Lord Krishna was invited after the Hastinapur battle of war of Hastinapur, sorry, Kurukshetra. Lord Krishna has already went back to Dwarka, but here for sacrifice, Lord Krishna was invited again, and he made sure that yajna was performed nicely by qualified brahmanas. Okay. So after that, after horse sacrifice was completed, the Lord remained a few months. Okay. So Sakyabhyo Anujata Krishna Sah Bandhubi Yayo Dwaravatim Brahman Sarjuna Yadu Hirvruta. This is O Shonaka. So Sukha Goswami is saying to Shonaka Rishi, O Shonaka, thereafter the Lord, having bid farewell to the king Yudhisthira, Draupadi and other relatives started for the city of Dwarka, accompanied by Arjuna and other members of the Yudhu dynasty. So thus ends the Bhakti Vedanta purport of the first canto, 12th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Birth of Emperor Pariksit. So tomorrow is a very wonderful chapter. Sorry, not tomorrow, we'll start from Monday. Dhritarashtra with homes. Very important teachings are given in this chapter. So we'll start from Monday onwards. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
You can unmute and ask.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.